An important part of delivering a fabulous presentation is taking the time to structure it and ensure the content is engaging, easy to follow, and delivers what your audience needs. Our aim today is for you to leave with a clear idea of what you want to include and how you might structure it. So, what would you say is the purpose of your talk?
My talk is around the benefits and the potential issues of using new technology, such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence in education. The purpose of the talk is to educate and inform the audience. There'll be around 100 people in the audience, and it's in a conference.
Great start, Dom. To make sure your talk is truly effective, let's frame that purpose from the audience's perspective. Try finishing this sentence. By the end of my talk, my audience will...
By the end of the talk, the audience will have a much better understanding of the technology landscape and potentially some tools that they can then incorporate into their curriculum and the learning journey for their students.
Nice, that's getting specific. So your audience will leave with a clearer picture of the tech landscape and practical tools for their students' learning journey. Before you dive into the content, we'll need an opening that hooks them with that promise. What are some ways you might present this message right at the start to intrigue them or show them why they should care?
Perhaps some sort of stat around technology usage and how much more engaged students are when using tools such as virtual reality. Do you have any suggestions for this?
A stat could work really well, especially if it's surprising and ties directly to their teaching goals. You could also open with a quick question like, how many of you feel your students aren't fully engaged? Or start an unfinished story about a student whose learning transformed through VR. Which approach feels most engaging to you?
Both sound interesting. Perhaps the second one around how students using virtual reality increased their engagement by 24%. Is that the kind of stat you're looking for?
Yes, that's exactly the kind of stat that can grab attention if it's relevant and credible. You could say something like, studies show students using VR are 24% more engaged. Imagine what that could mean for your classroom. Would you like to try saying an opening like that right now so we can fine-tune it together?
Sure, let's do this. So my opening would be something along the lines of, did you know your students can be 24% more engaged if they're using virtual reality to experience what they're learning as opposed to just hearing or seeing it?
That's a strong start, Dom. You might add a brief pause after the question to let it sink in, and then explicitly connect it to their needs, like, imagine the impact on your students' learning journey. How about we move on to building your credibility? Early in the talk, you'll want to show the audience they can trust you. You could mention your experience, quote reputable sources, or share a success story from your work. What do you think might best establish your credibility with this audience?
I can talk about my experience. I spent 4 years working in virtual reality and AI at Meta. And then I spent a few more years working in a startup on different technology tools and how to integrate those into universities and colleges within the United Kingdom.
That sounds like a solid way to establish credibility. Now, let's think about the middle of your talk. What main topic areas do you plan to cover to guide the audience?
I'm not entirely sure. Could you give me some suggestions?
Sure, think about key areas your audience needs to understand. For example, you could cover the current state of VR and AI in education, the benefits and measurable outcomes you've seen, potential challenges and pitfalls, and practical steps they can take to integrate these tools. Which of these, or any others, do you feel would be most valuable for your audience?
I think all have some value. Perhaps the key structure around what the current landscape is of technology. For example, the latest virtual reality headsets, their price points, and perhaps some real case studies about how they're currently being used, just so the people in the audience can really understand how they can use these tools with their students.
That sounds like a strong set of main topics. Now, how do you think you could present each topic to keep your audience engaged? Maybe mix up your delivery, use visuals or stories, or ask them questions. What ideas come to mind?
Stories would be great to add in. Perhaps we could interview a student, for example, who used one of these new technology tools, such as virtual reality, and how it has changed the way they're learning a particular topic and how much better it is now, for example.
I love that. An interview or story from a student makes it real and memorable. You could also vary your pace, use a simple graphic to show adoption trends, or ask the audience how they imagine using these tools. Now, let's think about your ending. How do you want to conclude in a way that leaves a clear message and maybe a call to action for your audience?
In the closing, perhaps we can add that stat that you mentioned around the adoption rates of technology in education, and then perhaps leave with a quote from one of the students using it about how happy and how much they are enjoying the experience as well with this technology.
That sounds like a memorable wrap-up. Reinforcing the adoption trend with a stat and ending on a human quote gives both credibility and emotional resonance. To bring this all together, let's summarize your plan. You'll start with that VR engagement stat to hook them, establish credibility by sharing your experience, cover the current tech landscape, accessibility, and case studies, keep it engaging with stories and an interview, and then close with adoption stats and a student quote. How does that action plan feel, and is there anything you'd like to refine before we wrap up?